A single missile launches into the night, and as its fiery trail vanishes into the darkness, millions of dollars disappear. Every launch is another invoice. In February 2026, when American forces engaged in open conflict with Iran, television screens quickly filled with military maps and political speeches. But very few people asked the uncomfortable question: what is the actual dollar cost of this operation? This digital counter shows the Pentagon's estimated spending for just the first 6 days of the conflict. It locked in at $11.3 billion. When you break that total down into a daily rate, the chart shows we are burning through nearly $2 billion every single day. The military was spending money faster than many countries generate economic output. By April, the timeline extends, and the Pentagon's public estimates show the running total smashing through the $25 billion mark. That upfront price tag sounds massive. But those billions represent only the earliest, most visible expenses. The actual financial burden on the public is much larger and heavily delayed. To understand why the meter runs so fast, you have to look at the mechanics of modern warfare. The military relies on deploying advanced, highly complex technology rather than strictly ground infantry. Every single cruise missile fired can cost over $1 million, and the advanced interceptors designed to destroy incoming threats often cost several million each. These incredibly complex weapons are used exactly once. Then there is the logistical footprint. Keeping stealth aircraft maintained in a combat zone and supplying massive naval fleets requires staggering resources. An aircraft carrier operates like a floating city, constantly consuming fuel, supplies, and maintenance hours. The modern military functions as a giant machine. Every second that machine stays turned on, it actively drains the national treasury far beyond the initial purchase price of the hardware. We have a clear historical precedent for how these expenses compound. Look at the Iraq War that began in 2003. This chart compares the highly optimistic budget estimates pitched by officials in 2003 against the reality. The original estimates were relatively low, but the final price tag eventually towered over $2 trillion. The primary driver for that massive increase is the legal and moral requirement to provide decades of post-conflict healthcare for returning veterans. Adding to that are the extensive equipment replacement cycles required to rebuild depleted stockpiles. And because wars are generally funded by borrowing money, the government pays compounding interest on all of it. Economists call these long-term obligations. A few months of active combat legally bind the nation to mandatory future spending that lasts for decades. Wars almost never stay within their original budgets. The heaviest financial burdens hit the ledger long after the shooting stops. And those military budgets don't stay isolated on a Pentagon spreadsheet. The financial impact bleeds directly into the everyday civilian economy. During the conflict, concerns immediately centered on the Strait of Hormuz. Instability in areas like this directly threatens vital commercial shipping lanes and energy routes. When oil routes are threatened, global energy prices spike. That immediately makes transportation drastically more expensive for any business relying on a supply chain. Businesses don't absorb those costs. They pass them directly to consumers. It shows up in grocery stores, in higher food prices, fueling widespread domestic inflation. This global economic uncertainty acts as a hidden, unlegislated tax. Every household pays it, regardless of what the official military budget says. According to Brown University's Costs of War project, America's post-9/11 conflicts have generated roughly $8 trillion in total long-term obligations. This pie chart visualizes that $8 trillion. In economics, this diversion of capital is opportunity cost, alternative investments permanently abandoned for warfare. That money could have reshaped infrastructure. Instead, it represents unfunded transportation, delayed research, and stagnant healthcare and education. The 2026 conflict with Iran locks a country into this exact pattern again. More borrowed money, more equipment to replace, more decades of mandatory care. Every trillion spent on conflict functions as a direct penalty on future generations, forcing decades of domestic stagnation to balance the ledger. A single missile in the night sky looks like a brief flash of light, but the financial commitment it leaves behind is irreversible. Politicians consistently promise quick victories with limited budgets. But history proves that the true bills arrive years later, and they compound for decades. long after the geopolitical headlines fade and the world moves its attention elsewhere. What will the final receipt for America's latest war actually say?